Greetings, salutations, respect, and love. I am Scott from the Fire Note, and today in the Prog Corner, we are asking that eternal and irrelevant rhetorical question: why Prog matters? Does it matter? Well, obviously, to the professor of Prague here, the Prague aficionado, it matters a great deal to me. And it matters probably to a lot of folks watching this channel, a channel called the Prog Corner. So obviously there's that. But why does it matter in the world at large, you ask? Well, it matters probably as much as any other genre of music matters. Every genre matters to somebody. Obviously, I feel that progressive rock is the best genre, but we're going to leave that subjective type of storytelling for another day. What we're actually looking at here is, in the real world, does prog actually matter? Now, we know it mattered once upon a time. But we are going to look at the three reasons why I believe prog indeed does matter in 2022. And the first of these three is the influences that prog absorbed. Now, when we look back to the golden era of prog, the early days of English progressive rock, classical music was certainly what they were trying to fuse into a rock template, whether it be the composers from the 1700s like Bach and Handel, or the 1800s with Tchaikovsky, Mussorgsky, and Beethoven. But it's a lot of the 1900 composers, the 20th century stuff, Copland, Ravel, Stravinsky, Bartok, Satie, Rachmaninoff. These guys seem to really hit something with a lot of these early prog pioneers. Guys like Keith Emerson were absorbing themselves in classical music. Rick Wakeman went to conservatory. So these classical composers certainly were influencing what these guys were writing. So prog matters because of its influences. When I started listening to Yes and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, I had no idea who Brahms was. I had no idea who Stravinsky was. So the commentary and the underlying tone of these classical influences certainly got me interested in exploring some of these. So it matters from that perspective, if for no other. But prog took on a lot of other genres and fused them into rock. It wasn't just classical. Later on, it became a lot of jazz influences started to come in. So all these different influences became part of the prog DNA. And as a result, fans of that music back then could actually go and explore a whole wide range of different types of music. Prog is very good about that. Taking different types of music and making it prog. Not a lot of other genres are as forgiving and as welcoming. So that's reason number one why prog matters. Reason number two is that during the 70s, during that heyday, when you had, yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Jethro Tull, Pink Floyd, these bands were selling millions of albums. These bands were selling tens of thousands of tickets. So people were seeing these bands, they were listening to these bands, not just fans, not just the record buying consumers, but other artists as well. If you listen to any act from the 70s, whether it's Harry Chapin throwing in a sitar on Cats in the Cradle, or Leonard Skinner using a mellotron, the influence of prog ran deep in the 70s. Whether you look at Elton John, originally auditioning for King Crimson. Billy Joel was a member of a three-piece prog band called Attila. All these people were influenced by progressive rock, whether they wanted to be or not. And one of the main things about prog that got people excited, whether they were into the progressiveness of the music or not, was the concept album. And concept albums certainly were not the exclusive domain of progressive rock. One could argue the very first concept album was Frank Sinatra's Song for Swingin' Lovers, but that was 1956. 1959, you had Kinda Blue and Miles Davis's influence. Also in 59, Dave Brubeck with Time Out, getting people used to all these different weird time signatures. But the concept album, I think, was the one thing that people identify with progressive rock more than any. Yet everybody and their monkey's uncle was doing concept albums there for a minute. Kiss put out The Elder. The Oddsmans even had a concept album. Hotel California is a concept album. So the prog influence in the 70s infected every single artist, from the Wishbone Ashes of the world. There's so many great artists that had to take a swing at it. Todd Rundgren started listening to a lot of Mahavishnu Orchestra and came up with a progressive masterpiece in Todd Rundgren's Utopia. Then you had the Grateful Dead doing Terrapin Station, which was a sidelong prog epic. So a lot of non-prog artists were influenced by it. And we talked earlier about Led Zeppelin and Stairway to Heaven and Queen and Bohemian Rhapsody. These are prog songs. So the prog influence throughout the 70s informed just about every single piece of music that came out of the 70s. So that's another reason why prog matters. But the third reason may be the most important, and that is its enduring and ongoing influence on current contemporary bands. Obviously, we had the second and the third wave of prog. We don't even need to discuss that. Prog influenced so many other artists that came after. The prog metal scene, post-rock. Are you going to tell me that Godspeed You Black Emperor is not prog? They sound like prog to me. Coheed and Cambria, The Deer Hunter, Muse, Steven Wilson, and then you've got all those great indie bands that have a lot of prog influence in them. Slint, Flaming Lips, Mercury Rev, Black Midi, Black Country New Road, Squid. I was looking at my non-prog list for 2021, and it was littered with bands that had prog influence. Do you mean to tell me that Iron Maiden isn't prog influence with those 10 and 13 minute long epics that they're doing? Steve Harris, clearly a Jethro Tull and Genesis fan. The influence of prog is everywhere. If you open your ears, you're going to hear Coldplay trying their hand at prog. Rumor has it that Foo Fighters is working on a prog epic. Kanye sampling prog in his track Power. So many great bands right now are utilizing prog influences. We haven't even talked about bands like Tool. How about Greta Van Fleet? Yeah, they're not a prog band, but they take their influences from the 70s, and any band that does that is inherently going to have a prog influence because of how littered with prog the 70s was. So yeah, Greta Van Fleet is not a prog band, but listen, you'll hear a lot of prog in their sound. And that's true of a lot of bands out there. I'm a huge Biffy Clyro fan. Those guys sound like prog to me. That's just me. I don't know. I'm a little different. But prog has had an outsized influence, even though its heyday is 50 years in the past. Even the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has started coming to their senses. We got Zappa in early, we got Genesis in, but we've also got Rush, we've got Pink Floyd, we've got Yes, we've got the Moody Blues, we've got Chicago, Traffic, prog adjacent bands. Peter Gabriel is in the Rock Hall as a solo artist. So yeah, we need Jethro Tull in there. We need Emerson, Lake and Palmer in there. We need King Crimson in the Rock Hall. But they've actually done a decent job of representing prog in there. So I applaud them, So does prog matter? Well, it matters to me, obviously. It matters to my 222 subscribers. But does it matter to the world at large? And my answer is an emphatic absolutely it does. Of course it does. Half of the music written that I care about is prog influenced. Well, probably more than half, but you get my drift. Hey, I'm even rocking a Blue Oyster Cult album cover back here. They were influenced. Everybody in the 70s was. But there's so much great music out there today as there was in the 70s. Prog absolutely matters. And I certainly hope to be listening to prog music until the day I die. And you're not going to stop me. Just go ahead and try. Anyway, I am Scott from the Fire Note. We are talking about why prog matters, hanging out in the prog corner on a beautiful snowy Monday. And anyway, I hope you guys hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. It would help me out a great deal, keeping this channel going, keeping it vibrant, keeping it relevant. I want to prove to the world that prog does indeed matter, and that can start with just you hitting that subscribe button. So anyway, I am Scott from the Fire Note. That's my spiel. I love you guys, and I'll see you next time.